Ferreira has been the Commissioner for Cohesion and Reform. This has been a unique development that in the title of the Commissioner, first time Cohesion and Reform have been connected. And I think this also resulted in some new distinct features what concerns the pursuit of cohesion policy in this cycle, but also the preparations for the future cohesion policy in the coming years and decades. This is, as you know, a stock-taking time in Brussels, in the European institutions. There have been already many discussions about the achievements of this Commission, and I suppose that in the coming months there will be even more. We thought that with this event, we would put the question of cohesion into the center of this discussion. I think many people understand in Europe that this is a highly important policy area of the European integration, but maybe we don't talk about it enough. Maybe it's not sufficiently stressed how important, as compared to the single market, as compared to trade policy, as compared to business innovation, what the European Union offers and delivers in this area. And I think it's also not highlighted enough how the whole concept of cohesion and the tools of cohesion policy developed in the recent period. And saying it's a stock-taking time, not simply because we are going to approach the end of this political cycle, but also because in the recent period, very important documents have been prepared in this field. On the one hand, in February, report of a high-level expert group has already been delivered, and in the coming weeks, the Commission is preparing a cohesion report to be put forward. So this is indeed a time to get more discussion and more insight about this policy field and also put it at the right place. And we cannot have a better speaker to explain it all than Commissioner Ferreira herself, who has an inspirational CV. I just want to highlight a few elements of this. First of all, she was born in Portugal, and that's something I can only envy because I happen to come from a part of Hungary which is notorious for diverse quality of wine, and coming from Porto obviously brings this very important connotation with itself. That might be geographically peripheral for Europe, but in terms of delivering quality in this regard is absolutely central and, so to speak, top of the world. But she also, before coming to Brussels, filled ministerial positions in the government of Antonio Guterres. And subsequently, for 12 years, he was member of the European Parliament and afterwards vice governor of the Central Bank of Portugal, from which she returned to Brussels to be commissioner for cohesion and reform. I also believe that this wide spectrum of policy field that is in the CV of Commissioner Ferreira allowed her to cover in her introductory talk a wider range of issues and not only the nitty-gritty of the cohesion policy as we often study through the lens of various programs and implementation of those and conditionality, which for many of us has become increasingly important in the recent period. So with this, I just want to highlight that these three parts of the discussion, which is ahead of us, will end at 12:15. Afterwards, my colleague David Rinaldi will invite you all to a light reception just in our premises. And because it's a structured program, two colleagues will help me to moderate this. At the end, Dr. Rinaldi, and before him, Professor Riccardo Crescenzi from London, the London School of Economics and Political Science. So thank you so much for coming. And with this, I would like to hand over to Commissioner Elisa Ferreira.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning. Good morning to all of you. And thank you very, very much, Laszlo, for this very, very kind introduction to my speech. Excuse me. What I would like to underline is, in fact, what you already mentioned, that this is a very crucial moment for social and geographical cohesion, and that our political family and foundations like FEPS have a very, very special role to play. It's a moment of change, a moment of decision taking, and this is really very important. I would also, before I formally start, I would like to thank you for mentioning that I come from Porto. Porto is the place where they make wine, and port wine is this special product that gets better as it ages. So that's hope also. Going into our serious matters, um, in fact, dear, dear, dear Secretary General, dear Laszlo, Rubina Plan, Margarida Marques, members of the European Parliament, Helena Marianu, and Professor Ricardo Crescenzi, dear friends, dear fellow progressists. Yes, I already mentioned that how important that you, Laszlo, decided to organize this meeting today. It is for me a great pleasure, and I find it very strategically very important for the reasons I just mentioned. We are approaching a very important election for the European Parliament. We are making decisions on all the leadership of the European agenda, Council, Commission, Parliament. And so knowing what is essential for Europe to stand together is of a fundamental nature in this period. In fact, this experiment, this European experiment that each time I follow and participate in this agenda, the more I find it exceptionally good, exceptionally. It's an event that different from everything else that we have known in the world history. It's a choice of countries to be together. It's not a consequence of an invasion or a conquering. And it is perceived like that by all those, and speaking with, for instance, Ukrainian ministers and responsible leaders, I heard words like joining Europe is what keeps the momentum going. It's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps our hope. And in fact, seen from the outside, we recognize, or people recognize, aspects that sometimes internally we forget. We forget to value, and we just look at the nitty-gritty of the functioning, disregarding the absolute essential character of Europe as a principles-based initiative, as a real interpretation in the real world of concepts like democracy, respect for human rights, and also introducing or accepting that the democracy also includes economic democracy, so access to health, access to education, access to basic goods, basic services, that in fact allow people to be active members of a society, and that's what democracy is all about. But in fact, last year we celebrated 30 years of the European single market. And this year we celebrate 20 years of the big enlargement of 2004. And of course, this is not everything in 2004, 2007, and 2013. And there are lots of connections between these events, having a single market, and the reinforcement of cohesion policy. In fact, when you look at a program that is based on principles of democracy and everything else, But then from an economic perspective, the rule is free competition, free movement, then in fact it gains an extra sense that this internal market policy has got to be accompanied side by side with instruments that really allow for the different countries and different regions to play the game of competition. Because you cannot compete between economies that are of a completely different level of development. And each time we enlarge not necessarily to those that are richer or equal. For a lot of countries, it's a prospect of growing faster, growing better, what makes them want to join. And so internally, we have got to prepare ourselves to give these regions and these countries the opportunities that they need to make the single market function and to avoid massive flows of people and massive concentration of investment. This is also important because for a long time, there was this argument that naturally the market will rebalance things, that the prices of labor and the prices of capital will create a kind of natural rebalancing of growth. When you look at the reality, we don't see this. We see that, in fact, innovation, the most performing companies, the most performing, most capable people, they tend to concentrate in agglomerations. And on the rest of the economy, there is a kind of suction in which people don't find a place to work, they don't find an appropriate job in the place where they were born, and very often we have the most qualified people on which countries and people have invested so much, they are forced to move away, to leave their regions, and to try to find jobs in the big cities or in other countries. And this is really what happened to a very important extent, and it would have been much more serious if someone, like in particular Jacques Delors, wouldn't have had the vision and since the beginning understanding that you have free competition, you have to have cohesion. And Delors said, and it's very interesting to read his texts, his speeches, because he always said that any time that integration is deepened or that we enlarge, we have got to reinforce cohesion policy. 2 months before passing and leaving us, this, genius, I think, of political thinking, and I refer this as it was told to me by Ricoletta. He spoke with Delors, and Delors told him, well, you are studying the internal market, how to improve the internal market. Don't forget exactly this, that each time we deepened the European project or enlarged it, we had to reinforce cohesion. And these 30 years of this boost to create, to make the internal market more internal, was in fact the moment where cohesion funding was created to be added to the social fund and to the regional fund, exactly to guarantee that this could function and that deepening and enlarging could perform. The truth is that if you go back, and I often mention it because it was very visible, particularly in England, the idea of the Polish plumber, that the market would be invaded by migrants, and what happens now is that all these enlargement countries, they are really part of the internal market. We see that on average, the enlargement included countries that had a GDP per capita of 52% of the European average. Now they have around 80%. So this is a massive progress. And in other words, their gap in relation to the European Union benefited the newcomers, but it benefited a lot. Excuse me. It benefited a lot all the countries in Europe because it enlarged the market. And a lot of the so-called net payer countries, they are investing massively and gaining a lot of business because in those countries they are building the highways, building the supplies of water, building the metros, and this enlarges their opportunities. And at the same time, trade increases. The fact that now you have more people earning a good condition of life increases the customers for the producers in Europe. And that's what we call the gain of enlarging the internal market. So in fact, it is a success story when you actually create conditions for everybody to be able to participate. And cohesion policy does exactly this. It supports the acceleration of development by offering some exceptional support that is negatively correlated. So the weaker you are in economic terms, the more support you get. If you are strong enough, you also receive a little bit. But what is expected of you is that you use your own means to grow and that then you have a supplement to do something that is more risky, more future-oriented, less hanging fruit kind. And in fact, what we have now is that with the modeling that we are working with, for the EU as a whole, the GDP in the long term will be 0.9, almost 1% higher as a result of the programs that were operated during the period of 2014-2020 and 21-27, and that an extra 1.3 million jobs will be created across Europe. So as progressives, I think it is important that we stress that there is no contradiction between solidarity, equity, social justice in one hand, and on the other hand, growth, innovation, competitiveness on the other. So the two things on the opposite have got to work together because they are mutually reinforcing each other. So the more you have more regions, more people giving their capacity, giving their innovative qualities, their work to the joint progress, the bigger the progress is. And so the more prosperous you are. If you leave half of the people on site, if you leave half of the regions on the side, you are bound to work only with the top ones, and this is a sign of fragility. And you saw it, because all those regions that were depending only one strong point, when COVID struck, you see that they were all closed. So multipolar growth and analyzing and addressing what can you offer by moving away in each region the blocking elements that prevent growth and stimulating and fostering the qualification of people, the qualification of institutions, and this is the element of reforms, the capacity to make the right decisions and to find the right way for the future is essential for a really solid economy and a solid society. So I would leave for the debate 3 points. One of them relates to the fact that we need cohesion policy more than ever. And we have got to be able to protect it, which doesn't mean having a kind of defensive approach. It means being open, being able to discuss. But in fact, we sometimes forget that when we talk about greening or digital, the biggest public investor in the green economy is in fact cohesion policy. because everything that you do, from water supply, from treatment of water, treatment of waste, the protection of forests, the protection of rivers, I mean, all this is done by cohesion dossiers. But also the support that is given to companies now is directed towards helping these companies to do a new approach in relation to the technologies and to the techniques they use for production in order to save and to respect the environment. So 1/3, more or less, of all the money that is managed by cohesion and that you recognize, it's the one that supports the railways, that supports the sewage stations, that supports schools, that support the refitting of buildings. All this is cohesion. So sometimes we think, okay, we have got to do green. No, green is embodied in the choices you make. The twin transition can only succeed if every region is addressed and can participate. And it is estimated that 2 million new jobs will be created with the green agenda. In fact, Europe is leader in greening, with also the intention to develop a kind of front-runner technique in relation to all the research, all the development of the new technologies, new know-how. But where do these jobs, where are they created? It is an issue. And so we have got to look at the regions and also to make sure that you create the conditions in the so-called weakest regions that sometimes are the most interesting ones, because that's the place where you can in fact support biodiversity, support sustainable tourism, support the use of hydropower, support the use of the solar energy, support use of the wind energy. And in fact, we have got to think what is missing in some of these regions, and it requires a lot of attention to the small cities, small towns that are the anchor for the functioning of these areas, what we need to add to these regions so that in fact they can create good and sustainable jobs and benefit from this new agenda. Because otherwise we can if we leave things without any attention, what happens is that it will be the big centers again that will be able to develop the innovation capacity and not necessarily spread it into the rest of the economy. So we have got to make sure that the greening and the digital, and of course the digital has here a potential that we have got to explore, because nowadays qualified people, when they move in search for a good jobs and career to the big cities, often they are very disappointed because the cost of the real estate in the big cities is so high and people earn wages that are not sufficiently high so that they can have a proper living. Whereas if you create the right conditions, and the digital helps a lot because you don't have to be in the big center necessarily, if you create the right clusters in smaller cities, in different places in the map, often people have a much better quality of life. And the quality of life is what matters. And it matters also because you need to create conditions for our young qualified people not to be forced to leave the places where they want to live. The moving is a right, but if you are kicked out, forced out of the place where you want to live, or you ideally would like to stay, then that is not the good agenda that we want to implement. So can we think of the regions and choose the right investments so that these young people, qualified people, can contribute to the development of their towns, of their cities, of their small areas, and at the same time have a proper living with good education for the children, with good health, and that help us also to build, if they so want, a family with good quality of life and with stable children, happy children. So this is something that is also the other side of the coin when you look at the phenomenon that is in fact happening now in Europe, that is we are losing population every day. Europe is becoming old, and this is a problem because the continent is shrinking in terms of demography, and this is the most important thing, it's people. The second topic I would like to leave with you is that life changes very quickly, and I was already hinting at some of these issues. From digital, biotechnology, everything is changing very quickly. So we need, in fact, in order for cohesion policy to be active, to be functioning, to be efficient, and to be perceived by people on the ground, you need, in fact, to be open to new methods, flexibility, simplification, reducing administrative capacity. And this is the reason why I decided to open a discussion, and I'm very grateful, but very, very grateful to all the experts from the academic side, from the public side, that accepted to join in a task force, in a group that for 1 year has been reflecting on how we can improve cohesion policy. And two of the most relevant members are present here today. Laszlo, of course, and Professor Riccardo Crescenzi, and they, together with 16 other people, under the leadership and coordination of another well-known academic colleague of Ricardo, that is Andrés Rodrigues Pose. They have been discussing in a very free and open way, and they just produced a report. And I, as Ricardo and Laszlo are here, I leave them I invite them to share the conclusions of this report. So, of course, we have got to do this, but there are things that are not questionable. That cohesion has got to be there, that you have got not to be, it's not Brussels that is going to decide what is adequate to do in Silesia, or in Galicia, or in Porto, or in Moldavia. No, it's not Europe that is going to decide it. You have got to go bottom up. You have got to ask people at the right level, usually the regional level. You have got to engage people. You have got to engage responsible people, because one issue that sometimes we forget is that even the most standardized horizontal policies, they have asymmetric impacts in the different regions. If you decide that the right size of apples is this side to trade inside Europe, this will fit some producers, this will not fit other producers. If you decide that you are going to open the market to import t-shirts from China, some producers of t-shirts in Europe will be completely affected, and the importers will be quite okay. So every policy has an asymmetric impact. So this calls also for you to discuss inside each member state what is the impact. Not that everything will be constrained by the regional convergence needs, but regional convergence has got to be taken into account and understood and recognized, because otherwise we are going to create a lot of imbalances. And my last point for the discussion is that this is about economics, this is about, but it is also a lot about politics. Now, one of the conclusions of the research that was done was, in fact, that there is this tendency, and this is one of the takeaways from this research, was that you have developed regions, you have middle regions that have between 75 and 100% of the average of Europe. Then you have very low profile regions. But then you have another problem, is that with all the changes of globalization and all the instruments and all the policies and all the impacts, then you have regions that are progressing, and the eastern part of Europe generally is progressing very fast. Then you have regions that at each of these categories are declining, they are losing. Even regions that were very rich with industry, for instance, progressively started losing momentum. And there are regions that are stagnant. For 20 years they are stagnant. And what does it mean to be stagnant? It means that, or depressing, that or declining. This means that you as a family see that the next generation has a much more difficult life than yours. This is the perception that you are not progressing, that you are not improving. And when this happens, they find through research a correlation between people being afraid of losing what they have, or of having no future, or of having no patience, because they don't see the economy opening places for them. And this fear creates the propensity to say, okay, when I am, I'm afraid, if I vote for someone and then these international forces change my life completely, nobody seems to be in control, then they start rejecting democracy and voting for anybody that comes and tells them, I'm going to protect you, don't worry. Even if this proposal is empty, because these people, they usually have a problem of power, they want power, but they have no alternative agenda. Their agenda is, okay, give me the power, give me the votes, and then I'll tell you what I do. And then we know what history tells us. But people being uneasy, people being afraid, creates the opportunity for these, sellers coming in and saying, I'm the one, I'm here, I will protect you. And I don't need to mention anybody in particular for you to understand what is the real danger for democracy that this kind of situation can generate. So I think, in fact, we have got probably more than ever to create a network of people that really know how essential it is to have some instruments of quantitative but also of a qualitative nature that really give content to the word democracy. And the democracy that we want to protect is a democracy that requires that social and economic cohesion is kept up front in our agenda. So thank you very much, and I'll be very interested in the debate that will follow. Thank you.
Dear Commissioner Ferreira, thank you so much for this introductory talk. I think we all cherish your references to Jacques Delors, Enrico Letta, but also the recent work of Rodriguez Poza. And I think we are all grateful for explaining these many dimensions of the cohesion policy, which, as you explained, is economic, ecological, but also social and political. So with this, I would like to invite Professor Crescenzi, who is going to moderate and also introduce the next panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you today and to introduce and chair this panel. Of course, even introducing a panel after Elisa Ferreira's talk is difficult because you have the impression that she said everything already. So let me just make a couple of points that I think might be helpful in guiding our conversation. Elisa Ferreira mentioned 30 years from the beginning of the single market, 20 years since the previous big enlargement of the EU. The point that I would like to make is that why do we have new goals and do we need new tools for shared prosperity in Europe? And what I would like to highlight is the fact that for the first time in history, the single market, first time in its history, the single market is now swimming against the flow, against the global flow. Let me qualify this statement. When the single market was launched in 1993, following, like up until 2009, up until like the crisis in 2009, we were in a phase of what is now called hyperglobalization. So trade was expanding, FDI were expanding, so the world was generally becoming more and more integrated economically. This has stopped in 2009. So since 2009, the single market, the process of creation, of progressive integration of the member states of the European Union has been going in a different direction vis-à-vis the global flow. Because the world, since 2009, has stopped the process of rapid globalization, of rapid economic integration. This has changed, this has stopped, has come to an halt, so a moment of stagnation in FDI, in trade flows, in between 2009 and COVID, and things have changed further with the following shock, with COVID in 2020. So in 2020, there is another big change in terms of the process of globalization outside the EU. And this has gone hand in hand with the change in the trend in regional disparities. Okay, if we look at the most recent cohesion report, the 8th cohesion report, we see that the index of regional disparities, say if we make it to 100 in the year 2000, in 2009, so before the crisis, it goes down to 80. So we have a slow decline in regional disparities. Then from 2009 onward, it stops there. So it stays at 80. So regional disparities in terms of GDP per capita stop changing. So this coincides with this big shift in the relationship between the process of European integration and the process of global economic integration. This is a major structural shift. The second shift in 2020, we go from a process of globalization, so of slower economic integration, into a process of regionalization. So where we do see economic integration, but more and more within self-contained regions across the globe. Okay, and we see that there is a change in the composition of global flows of investment within the EU and outside the EU. We see trends of reshoring, we see like fundamental changes in global linkages, thinking, for example, in terms of the new and emerging geopolitical tensions. The Economist Intelligence Unit has been like looking at monitoring geopolitical tensions across states since 2010. Okay, and in 2010, 2009-2010, they were reporting that out of 180 countries, 180 geographies that they were monitoring, 50% of them were at no or low risk in terms of like geopolitical tensions, okay, in terms of wars and others. In 2023, this goes down to 25. This means that 75% of the geographies that are monitored are in some sort of high risk in terms of geopolitical tensions. So this changes completely the relationship, the economic relationship across, between different states and different economies across the globe. So geopolitical tensions, big technological acceleration linked with artificial intelligence, as well as, if we think about the pandemic, linked also with the way in which we work. The application of work from home, the disconnection between geographical proximity and the supply of labor changes fundamentally the way in which we work. And it is unclear what share of this is here to stay and what share will instead, what of this phenomena will change. On top of this, we have the climate crisis, and we have big demographic changes, big demographic change in the EU. So the interesting feature of all these new trends is that they require a coordinated response. However, at the same time, they push for more disintegration. Different blocs are trying to respond in their own way. And we have seen this, how like the uncoordinated response, like the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, generate very significant tensions in our member states and across the globe. So this changes fundamentally the position of European regions, and it changes fundamentally how we can achieve cohesion in Europe. So this makes this change, a profound change in the relationship between the single market and the external world, between the process of European integration and centripetal forces that might reinforce regional disparities make cohesion and cohesion policy now more important than ever. We, as Commissioner Ferreira has highlighted, the propagation of these shocks, the propagation of this global phenomena happens through very precise channels. So what happens in one country, what happens, we have seen this with the propagation of the shocks linked with the war in Ukraine, has very localized geographical impacts when supply chains are disrupted, when trade flows are being restructured. And these impacts are highly asymmetric. Highly asymmetric in terms of some regions are highly affected, some regions are not, some regions benefit, some regions don't. So this generates new patterns, and old patterns of disadvantage overlap, build upon the new patterns of disadvantage, but also with the new opportunities that are created, as Commissioner Ferreira was mentioning, for example, in terms of the green transition. So this becomes like a fundamental issue, a fundamental demand for cohesion policy to address in a new way the old challenges, but also to address the new challenges that are created by this new global environment. So we need some evolution in terms of the existing tools, and these are like the questions that I will be asking our speakers. We need some evolution of the existing tool, but we also need some brave experimentation in terms of the new tools that are needed to deal with the new challenge. It is very important because fundamentally, when we have done research on the link between cohesion policy and political outcomes, we see that it is impact that matters. It's not about the distribution of money, it's about impact. When cohesion policy, when European policies can generate positive impact in the territories, can generate impact for people in terms of their economic opportunities, this generates support for Europe. This generates buy-in that is fundamentally important. So the challenge is delivering impact while staying current, while addressing the new challenges. So these are the question that I will try to ask our speakers, our panelists to address. Will be part of the panel our Commissioner, Elisa Ferreira, Rovana Plumb, who is a member of the European Parliament and the Vice President of the Socialist and Democratic Group, as well as Eleni Mariano, who is the Secretary General of the Conference of the Maritime Regions. Please. I guess the chairs.
Yes, she wants to stand, so we can all stand, no problem. Or we can bring these things here.
So let me ask with a question for our three panelists first. So when we think about
This is only for the water.
This is just for the water? Okay. No, we moved the chairs, no?
Don't worry, 1 second. No, Rodrigo.
Come with the table back. Come back.
Then you can also stand here.
You want us to stand?
there is an exercise component, so you can skip the gym and considering the multiple shocks, not that we have mentioned before, since the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, but more recently with COVID, what do you think, what cohesion policy tools have proven effective in promoting economic development? So what are the tools that we can think of maintaining, that we say, okay, they have achieved impacts, notwithstanding the changing landscape, notwithstanding the changing context? And what, on the other hand, new actions you think cohesion policy should bring in, should be introduced or reinforced in order to future-proof cohesion policy? So not only to address the current challenges, but also looking at the future, what new tools should become part of the portfolio of cohesion policy? Elisa, can I ask you to?
Yeah, I can. And thank you very much. I think it was very important to frame what we are discussing within the changes in the global markets and the global world. And it is difficult to say, in a short kind of period, what worked and what didn't work. But basically, there are two elements that matter. First is the quality of the development vision. So of an area. Imagine a region that is subject to these changes. It is not easy to find out how what are the blocking things in the development of that region, and what are the kind of bottlenecks, and then what are the assets that on which we have to build. But it is true that in certain regions, the combination, and this is the second point. The second point is the coordination of the different actions. So in certain cases in which you have, for instance, a university or a technological center, you take at the same time the kind of companies that exist in that area. You start giving training to people and supporting research that improves the quality of the products that they are doing. And this happened, for instance, in areas that depend on agriculture. But in reality, they managed, some regions managed to build a lot of value added in packaging, in how you water the plants, how you can do the marketing and promotion and export. And in the most traditional sectors, sometimes you find reasons for value added. Another important aspect is the quality of the institutions. So the kind of responsibility and quality of the schools, of the universities, of the mayors, of the regional entities, how serious they are about fostering development. And this is why through I have two portfolios. One is the usual regional DG Regio that you know very well, and the other one is DG Reform. And DG Reform is supporting technically the reorganization of member states, or technical support to regions or to municipalities. And of course, this is not something that this is why, I mean, we depend for the future, for the quality of the programs that we develop. We need that the culture and that your attitude when you are on the ground, when you are campaigning or discussing, that this quality control is really granted. So the other aspect is human quality, the quality of the human being. Because when we talk about institutions, when we talk about municipalities, we are talking about the quality of the people, the technical and capacity and honesty and serious capacity to work for the benefit of the region. There are ingredients that in fact work. If we want to go a bit further, another important aspect that has worked is when you manage to create networks across Europe. For instance, if you are doing some research on innovative products or technologies, it gives a boost if you manage to interact with other aspects of the other regions, other countries, and that in fact you cooperate, because there you have a quantum leap in what you do. Traditionally, in the past, we used to do, the weakest regions had no problem in deciding what to do, because they were missing so many things, and particularly infrastructures, that the first step was always to build infrastructures. And this is in certain countries still, or regions still, what happens. And that is complex, but easy at the same time. It's just to have the technical capacity to do the projects, the plans, to go through all the bureaucracy of procurement and of. But when you have done the basic infrastructures, then it becomes more complex, because then you are touching upon what you are going to do with infrastructures. So what is the value added that you are going to bring? What is the quality of the jobs that you are going to create? What is the kind of ecosystem that you are going to offer to people that decide to invest in that area? And this requires a lot of work and a lot of attention. But we see across Europe regions that manage really to make this jump and to get out of sometimes a very low level of development and progress very easily, not having such a strong differentiation between infrastructures and then the other aspects, more qualitative. So in certain regions, even in, particularly in the eastern part of Europe, they are just, when they implement, for instance, the roads or the metros, they automatically develop the digital control through artificial intelligence so that they reduce the impact on CO2 and other climate issues of the managing of the traffic. And so you see very interesting experiences in which you combine already the most future-oriented techniques with the most traditional things, like solving basic problems of transport or of energy management in a city. So the answer is not black and white. It's the set of ingredients that you put in that I see has worked or not worked. And the last comment is the risk that certain companies, certain beneficiaries, potential beneficiaries, stop having an ambition and a vision when they use funds. When you get used to getting funds, that is a red sign or a yellow sign saying, okay, watch out, because you get used to receiving funds and you lose the capacity to understand the risks in the momentum, because if you don't move forward in the right direction, in a couple of years you'll be in a situation of stagnation or decline. This is, it's not a very, but there is no silver bullet for this. I'm just sharing what our conclusions when we look at what happens across Europe.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I will ask Rovana to elaborate further on the point of what worked and what should we add to future-proof cohesion policy.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. First of all, I would like to thank to Laszlo for inviting me at this important debate, because it's about our future. But I do not pass so quickly, as I would like to say that we are one day before the International Women's Day. So I wish happy Women's Day for our colleagues, for our fellows, for our mothers, for our grandmothers, and for every lady and girls. It's important because we, as political family, always we think that without being feminist, Europe cannot survive. And therefore, the gender equality should be everywhere, in every policy. Margarita is here, and they succeeded to introduce for the first time the gender dimension into the budget. Elisa, after you is very difficult to speak, very difficult, because you explain a lot in a very comprehensive manner. So we know each other since many years. I was between 2017 and 2019 Minister for European funds, regional development, and I was directly involved in cohesion policy. There is no doubt that cohesion policy proved its benefits everywhere. I give you one example. I am coming from Romania. Since our accession to the EU, the GDP, because Elisa referred to the GDP per capita, increased in Romania with the support of cohesion policy from 45% GDP to 60% GDP from EU GDP average. That means that we developed the country. That means that we supported a lot the daily life of the citizens, the welfare, as we say. We can see everywhere in eastern part of Europe how many schools, new schools, renovated schools are there, where our children or grandchildren are learning. We can see that a lot of people were helped in hospitals which were created due to the support of cohesion policy. We can see infrastructure. In Romania, for example, there was a huge problem of the infrastructure for supplying water for the people. Now, with the support of cohesion policy, we succeeded to give access to the people for this important public service. So the connectivity by infrastructure support also from cohesion policy. So there is no need to say more than this, that the cohesion policy, from not only from my point of view, but from our political family, is at the heart of the values, of our values. Because with this policy, we invest in people. We invest in people, and the human capital is very, very important by giving added values. We need this. So, what to say? Being in this context, global one, with a lot of challenges in front of us, passing perma-crisis, I would like to congratulate Elisa, because we, our family, together with you, Elisa, we found very, very quickly the solutions in order to pass the crisis, especially the COVID, and then it came the energy crisis, and of course for us, which are at the border of Ukraine, the aggression of Russia against Ukraine. We have 630 kilometers border with Ukraine. European Union helped us a lot, but we help also all the citizens, the refugees which passed Romania, and not only passed, because there are more than 200,000 now there. So we found the solutions. Who found the solution? We, our political family. And this is very, very important, because always we can find solutions, always we can give the right answers to the needs of the citizens where they are living. So, not to be so long, because it's at my heart, this cohesion policy, because I realize that every day with its support, we can do better. I think more than this, that in order to face all the challenges, the global shocks, as you say, Ricardo, we need more than ever solidarity. We need more than ever cohesion. What policy can give the best answer in order to achieve, to have this solidarity, cohesion? Cohesion policy. Well, for the future, what I think, first of all, we should think, and I do believe that you, Elisa, together with that commission who is involved in present the future cohesion policy in order to be reinforced according to the needs of the people and in securing the EU economic's future, I think that we should have some inputs. For example, Ricardo is asking about some tools. I think that one of these can be that we should look beyond GDP as the sole indicator, beyond the GDP as the sole indicator. Why? Elisa said earlier that we should take into consideration the participation of the people, the quality of the people in developing the regions, and we should take into consideration also the particularities of each regions. Then, I think that, and we think as S&D Group, that is necessary to increase the multi-level governance. A more flexible cohesion, it is very clear, and we proved that this can be possible during the perma crisis, and we proved this, that it's important to be flexible. A simpler, of course, cohesion policy in administrative terms, a cohesion policy that strengthens the green and digital transitions, and this is very important because we should create a better environment for all citizens. A cohesion policy that tackles intra-regional disparities. We have a lot of proposals, but of course, this can be put on the table. From my point of view, for example, and Margarita, is necessary not only the budget for the cohesion policy, because we are talking about the enforcement of the policy, but to enforce the policies, we need money. Okay, the money, but for cohesion policy, and I fully support the idea of Margarita, we need an increased co-financing rate, maybe 100% for some policies. I stop here because there are, when I talk about cohesion policy, believe me, I can talk 48 hours without drinking water.
Giovanna, thank you very much. Very many insights. Eleni.
Okay, thank you for that. We heard a lot, and of course we're speaking to the converted, us being pro-cohesion all here. I think it's important to say that cohesion has worked for many, many years, the cohesion policy. So it's not the new kid in town. So we have had some good results in all the different reports, cohesion reports. We can see the good results across the board. Now, we also heard about the geopolitical crisis today, that they are in all newspapers and they are felt by our people, and also what you said about the globalization. All that, it's true, you said it, Commissioner, creates fear to the people. They are fearing about their future. I have children. I can tell you, I have a lot of difficulty to convince them to go to vote for the European Parliament, at least the youngest one, 20 years old. What's the point? So, it is important, I think, that whatever we, on our daily life, on our political life, on our commission life, on our mother life, on any life, that we try to explain that this fear cannot be overcome by a populist approach, which is easy, but should be really looked into how Europe has done so far, how we have coped so far with the stagnation, with the globalization, and why, and what is the policy, cohesion policy's role in all that? Because we talk about cohesion policy, but then in each individual country we call it differently. And people, they don't know what it is. They don't. In Greek, they call it differently. So people tell me, when I ask somebody in the Committee of the Regions or anywhere else, they don't know how many are involved in the cohesion policy. They don't know because they don't have this word in their heads. The local politicians, they may call it differently. So what's important is to say there is this regional policy. And what are the good things of this regional policy, which I think could really help with this fear, is the fact that it's a European policy. There are European objectives. It's in the treaty. Social, economic, and territorial cohesion, it's in the treaty for a reason. Elisa Ferreira said it. We are not, and I'm going to say it because I'm representing the peripheral maritime regions. What's important is that everybody finds solutions in their own country, and they don't have to go to big urban areas, because it's not good to go to the urban areas, because it's not good for the urban areas, it's not good for the rural areas, it's not good for the peripheries. It means that if you cannot keep your people, it's something, and you have this brain drain, it's a problem overall. It's not a problem for just the area where the person goes out. It's also in the area where they go in, because then they don't have all the infrastructure you mentioned before. It's too expensive. It's overcrowded. So there are things that we can do in a way by this cohesion policy, which looks overall. It looks on all how European policy, how European economic policy, how European social policy, how the balanced territorial development would take place on the ground. So that's the thing. And we need to shout out loud about this thing. And that's important to be kept. The other principle, because we wrote a paper at CPMR, our red lines. We're going to discuss it in Patras together. It means this is where we really cannot go beyond, because the red line is what? Multi-level governance. Not because we like it and it's so nice that everybody's involved. It's because if you are not involved, then you don't know what you are doing. And if you have a European strategy to be implemented at the local and regional level, the least local and regional level needs to know what's happening. You cannot just go like, I don't know, an example of any other program that has been recently created and then has been managed at national level, and then not having projects enough for the amount of money available, and then going to the regions all over. Don't you have a project? It doesn't work like that. What it works is that you have the way to cooperate together from the beginning, from the designing to the implementation with the local and regional authorities, so everybody does their bit to be able to reinforce and implement this policy on the ground. And that goes for reforms as well. Nobody is against reforms, and cohesion policy has had reforms. It's not the first time we see it, but it's been called whatever. It's been called different, enabling conditions or whatever. Now, the idea is that how do we do it in a way that everybody, again, it contributes on their own weight, value, and competence? We cannot ask people to do things that they have absolutely no relevance or no responsibility or no competence. All I'm saying is the principle, multi-level governance, certainly. We keep it. The way to actually have a European strategy implemented at the local and regional level, we keep it. We need to have that so that everybody understands and has less fear in a way. Then how do you also create as more and help more, you mentioned it, is this administrative capacity. It's very important. It's very important. Not everybody has it. I know there is a lot of work going on administrative capacity. Because the policy is working for many, many years now, since the 70s, there has been created an administrative capacity across the member states and the regions. To be honest, it exists. It needs to be reinforced more and more. So, and not create new structures. A migration policy, immigration structure, I don't know, recovery policy, recovery structures, whatever policy, whatever structures. And let's give the structures we have. They are there for a reason. And the fact that they are there with a common shared responsibility, so shared management, shared responsibility, that makes sure that everybody does their own bit on the particular contribution to it. And I always say that, I'm sorry if you have heard it me saying, I really think when we speak about the economy, imagine a country that is like, I don't know, a horse that is with a carriage and 4 wheels, yeah? And then you have 2 very polished wheels, excellent. One wheel, and the other wheel ready to fall apart. Once this one wheel falls apart, nothing moves. So I would like to really support the big centers and make sure that everything goes very well with our good, children in the classroom. But we need to help everybody, because once the wheel is off, then nothing moves. Then we are really stagnating at national, regional, European level. So all our wheels need polishing. And cohesion policy is this oil. is this way for actually making sure that everybody's aware, everybody's doing their bit, and citizens know about it. And we need to say that, the politicians as well, because most of the times when cohesion policy is doing something good, it's the national member state that did it, or the regional member. So we need to make sure that everybody knows, not only the pancard, paid by the Europe, but it's being done because Europe has looked into that for the elections tomorrow to convince our children to go to vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you very much, Eleni, Rovana, and Commissioner Ferreira. We'll now take questions from the audience. I'll ask people who want to ask a question to introduce themselves, and please keep in mind that the question has a question mark at the end. So it needs to be a question, not a statement, please. Usually, yes, most of the time.
Milan Petit from the Systems Transformation Hub and a researcher associated with FABS. What is the role you see for cross-regional cooperation to solve one of the all the challenges of cohesion policy? How can regions really work together better to overcome their respective weaknesses? And, well, united in diversity, we all know it. So how do you do that? Thank you.
Let's take like a few questions together. One over there and one at the back.
Thank you. My name is Marine Gaudron. I work for the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. All of you almost mentioned bottom-up approach and multi-level governance, but actually now it's more than that. I want to share two numbers. Local and regional governments, they are responsible for almost 50% of public investments in Europe. It's even more, it's almost more than 60% when it's climate significant investments. So you need local level to engage the green policies. And there are also the ones that you need to implement almost 70% of EU regulations. But now with the crisis, the COVID crisis,
70%.
70% of EU regulations need a local decision to be implemented. Sorry. But now with the COVID crisis, the inflations, a lot of our members signal us that municipalities, they are almost not able to implement their public services because the financial capacities are really limited, are really
Is the question coming?
Yes. My question, I needed this explanation for the question. My question is, can cohesion policy do more than just involve them in the decision, but actually more support the financial capacity and the capacities of municipalities and regions to deliver their public services?
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have 3 more questions, one at the back. The gentleman over there.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Heil. I work at the European Parliament as an advisor, and I'm a former cohesion policy manager for many years. And my question would go to the Commissioner. In our one and a half hour debate so far, I think nobody has mentioned the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which is a little bit strange to me because it's an instrument that does similar things as cohesion policy, although it is programmed and managed in a completely different way. And there are also calls in the European Parliament, I imagine also elsewhere, to make the RRF a permanent instrument. My question would be that based on the last couple of years of the 2 instruments coexisting one next to the other, how do you see their role differently? Do you think they will both stay in the arena? Is the RRF a challenge to cohesion policy? And if yes, what would you take over from the RRF to cohesion policy? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have like one question here in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Namita and I work at E3G, a climate change think tank. My question, perhaps especially to you, Commissioner Ferreira, is with the EU trying to respond to the Inflation Reduction Act with the Green Deal Industrial Plan, how would you say that industrial policy and social policy, or cohesion policy specifically, can reinforce one another? Or better yet, how can industrial policy be a driver of cohesion policy? Thank you.
Thank you. And one last question here at the front.
You have 2. Okay. One is enough, maybe. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elisa, Rovana, Eliane, for your presentations. Very interesting. I have a question with a question mark. But I'd like to do a first comment. It means I'm very, very in favor to increase the flexibility in cohesion policy. But flexibility can't jeopardize cohesion identity. So this is a main point, and we need to have limits. Flexibility, yes, but we need to define the flexibility, and we can't jeopardize the cohesion identity. But my question mark is linked with this last question. It means we have cohesion, and we have now the experience, the RRF experience. And of course, it's different way to organize, different methodologies, different way to control, to monitor. So there are good experience and there are new approaches how to use EU funds. And my question is, which lessons can we learn from RRF to introduce and to improve cohesion policy on the line, like Elisa said in the beginning. So I don't want to question or to introduce questions on the objectives or the goals of the cohesion policy. As Rovana said, all of us, we agree and we know why cohesion is important. But the point is, can we learn lessons from RRF to improve the results of cohesion policy? As you said in the beginning, cohesion policy linked with political impact.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. What questions? Fortunately, we have possibly the best panel to answer. Elisa Ferreira, I'll ask our panelists to respond in 3-4 minutes. And you decide like how to balance the answers. Commissioner Ferreira, please.
Well, it's a challenge because the questions were extremely good. So cross-regional cooperation is one of the important aspects. We have been developing a lot of projects through Interreg in particular, but we want to expand it in the sense of making also more vivid the cooperation across regions, particularly when it comes to developing technologies, innovation, new methods of managing issues or problems. And so I think there is a lot of value added. A novelty is that we are starting an Erasmus for civil servants. We already have 300 civil servants on a voluntary basis that go and stay for a couple of months in the administration of another country. And this is managed by DG Reform, and it's performing as well. And there is a lot of interest in order to see how, with the same legislation, how you can learn from more expedite ways of managing the legislation and implementing it. And so I think this is just an example. Then there was this issue of the financial capacity. It's not financial capacity only, it's also the administrative capacity and the level of decision making at the more local level. We speak about regions, which includes internal responsibility for the different localities and different dynamics inside the region, because you need a certain level, a certain dimension in order to devise a development plan. At the local level, you have proximity services, but to have a vision, you have got to understand the role of the big centers, of the smaller centers, of the big infrastructures. So we need to have a minimum level to have a performant plan of development. So on this, I think one of the issues that we can discuss is the decentralization problem, on which until now there have been no recommendations that interfere with internal choices. Progressively, more and more countries are introducing a regional level and with a different level of capacities and responsibilities. But we have here two people from two countries that for a long time were very centralized. It is recognized in Romania. They have now 8 regions, and the regional level is doing, in fact, a lot of better choices, better capacity, because they are closer to the citizens and they are closer to the problems. Same or a similar process happened in Greece. Greece was for a long time a very centralized country, still is a little bit, but nevertheless it's a work that is in progress, and now they have 13 regions. And I had the chance to speak with all the leaders of the regions, and it is important to recognize that some regions, they have to invest in sustainable tourism, others have an industrial profile, others have different assets. So this is something that maybe in the future we can reflect upon in terms of recommendations, or at least exchange of experiences. For time being, but of course, I mean, you have got to give the means to make the counterpart. But for the weakest regions, you can go up to 85% of co-financing. So sometimes this is really what keeps the investment going, even during the crisis. I'd like to say something on the previous discussion, but in fact, in 2008 and 9, until 2010 and 11, when there was this adjustment, strong adjustment, very often the quality, the public administration almost disappeared, or at least it was not renewed, particularly outside the big capitals, and the only source of public investment was almost the funding, the cohesion funding, because for certain countries the adjustment was cut public investment to the limit. And so this is a function that is not known, but keeping, and I think at that time I was in the parliament, I was very vocal against the sanction, if you don't comply with Stability and Growth Pact, sanctioning by cutting the funds, because even the instability that the funds would not be there was panic, it was a deterrent. And so I still think it makes, we should really, there is a sanction regime, and I'm speaking not as a commissioner in this dimension, I'm not committing the commission, I'm speaking, referring to my past life, where my argument was, okay, there is a sanction regime for the violation of the Stability and Growth Pact, so for certain countries you cannot put two sanctions. One is the usual sanction and the other one is this, because it ends up punishing those that cannot do a lot about it, because it's the regions and municipalities that don't manage the macroeconomic variables. On the RRF and the relationship, I think both Margarida and you mentioned it. I think the RRF was really one of the big, important movements and decisions from this Commission. I'm very proud of it, because for the first time we gave an answer to the limited budget that we have. As you know, we have the budget is 1% of the total income. 1/3 of it goes for agriculture, 1/3 goes for cohesion, and the rest is everything else that we do. So, and when the crisis was really there, we managed really to take the decision to go to the market and to borrow. Of course, it is an emergency instrument. So it was very positive, it is great. We are analyzing very closely what we can get from inspiration from the RRF. One of the aspects that is justifiable, because it's an emergency instrument, is the fact that it is a bit short term. So it has to finish in 2026. It makes a lot of sense in an emergency instrument. The reality is that sometimes the preparation of the reforms and the preparation of the investments was very too fast. So, I mean, a lot of projects that were prepared for cohesion were just shifted into this. And now we are faced with a lot of projects coming back when they feel that they cannot finish the projects on time. And so all this shifting is sometimes a bit shaky in terms of the quality of what you are really financing and value added. Because sometimes you just move into the RRF what was already prepared and going to be done. Anyway, I mean, I repeat, this was really a very important thing. One aspect that we are also analyzing is to substitute invoices as the basis to reimburse for targets. But for this, we need the capacity at the regional level to set very precise and quantifiable targets. So this requires much more knowledge and much more capacity at the local level. And we are analyzing also how we can combine this with something that in certain cases have not yet been tested, that is the simplification methods with invoices without costs, reimbursement without invoices, so simplified cost options that really were introduced in the legal text of 2027. Some countries are already trying to introduce them. Other countries, they are just in the rush and they didn't yet see how they could adjust it. So that is one aspect. The other aspect that I think needs to be kept, and here Margarida was saying what are the things that we want to keep, and I hope also you will be defending it, is the place-based approach, which was, I mean, with the rush and the purpose, it's not sufficiently kept. So in a lot of cases also, it was the most developed areas and most dynamic that had prepared projects to be immediately refinanced. Then someone asked about industrial cohesion, industry and cohesion. There was, it was you. There was a lot of, I mean, in this shift after 2019 crisis in particular, we understood that industry was needed in Europe. Until there are ups and downs, but I mean, it was the consumer preference. So, and the enthusiasm with globalization and free trade, and the consequences were sometimes that some industries completely became weak inside Europe or disappeared, and some were in fact exported outside, and the importers were really getting the value added. So there was a change of mind when we understood that even some industries like car industry could not survive if we couldn't import the pieces and components from the outside. This shift also was accompanied by a very strong interest and enthusiasm in going forward in relation to more future-oriented industries. And this created the possibility, and that was the mechanism that we used to release, to open state aid to support the attraction or the development of such industries. And so two countries, used or asked permission to use more than 90%, to only two countries, 90% of the authorizations were asked by two countries. So in this circumstance, what we decided, with support of the European Parliament and support of the Council, was to allow for cohesion funds to finance the attraction of these same industries if the region is weak, or if the country is under 100% in terms of GDP per capita. So the attraction can be done according to the state aid rules by if the region or the country so decide and wish transferring, in fact, money from the lines that are already there in the program to attract and to finance as if it was own budget, as if it was state aid and under the state aid regulation, but to attract these future-oriented industries if that is considered adequate. And so we are talking about biotechnology, we are talking about deep tech, we are talking about digital industries. So this has been approved, it is already functioning, and so you can use regional funding to attract not only small and medium companies, but these industries, in particular in areas where really, I mean, you are in a transition of industries. So that includes just transition fund areas that are also an important aspect. I would like to make some comments on emergency, on gender, on this beyond GDP, but the distribution of the funding is much more than GDP. I mean, already the formula includes unemployment, includes the size of the country, includes a lot of things because it has been adapted. But I mean, this of course would take a lot of time, but thank you very much for your interest and your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Eleni, the floor is yours for like a quick answer, if you want, in 2 minutes.
I'm going to repeat. No,
mine, no.
Then yes, it's.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm going in reverse order, but if you want to.
You want to go now? I don't mind. Okay. Please. All right. Now, on the questions, I think it's more or less what has been said. I'm going to stay more on this cross-border and cooperation between regions. Obviously, it's what we do as an organization. We are shaped even in macro-regional shape. I don't know if you know anything about us. It's about, geographical areas. We think it works so much better if people, they actually work with their peers, and that's something that has been back in our DNA as a structure. And definitely all the activity that could be in reinforcing Interreg, that's something that we are working on and we are pushing for in a way. It's important. So that's what should be said on that one. Now, on the RRF, I did mention something about the absence of territorial blindness in a way on the RRF. So it was extremely important that the Union went out to the market for that. So hopefully they may go again if we go to discuss the budget, because I'm not sure with 1% of GNI we're going to do a lot of business given the situation as it is today. So hopefully this way would help in the future to see other means for, I don't know, defense, or because we are in a difficult situation. I don't know, it's not an easy place and situation and timing that we are actually facing. So hopefully in the RRF, if we can keep the flexibilities or the financial arrangements that they have been more facilitated in a way, and put them into the discussion on simplification and auditing into the cohesion policy in the future, that would be brilliant. Because I do believe we are going to have a policy in the future on regional development or economic development. It's in the treaties. It will happen. It may be called cohesion or whatever, but what's important is to keep this place-based approach. So to any regional policy in the future, the place-based approach should be kept. And that wasn't in the RRF. And that has created the kind that I was saying before in my introduction, that projects had to go back to the regions, member states, to ask for projects to be put into the pipeline kind of ready-made projects that they had submitted. So we need this coordination from the beginning for that to work. I think I'll stop here and...
Thank you. Eleni Rovana,
okay.
Last but not least, please.
1 minute. I am used with this place-based approach and the principle for no one left behind or no region left behind. Two main things to take into consideration: cross-border. Next week we have the plenary week at Strasbourg, and we have the report related to the 2014-2020 outcomes, which will be voted Tuesday in the plenary, and we firmly call for the Commission to deblock the cross-border, because you asked for the cross-border legislation, because we need it. Take into account what it happens now in the geopolitical context in the regions and countries at the borders. Thank you.
May I just say a little
Thank
thing?
you, of course.
Yeah, just because the Commission has proposed, there was a project in the past, in 2008, for simplifying the administrative relations on one side and the other side of the border. This was rejected by the Council in 2018. The Commission just proposed a new version, lighter but still seed, and it is now being discussed at the Council level. So, I mean, the Commission has already done what we could do. In 2018, it was rejected, and now the new proposal has been presented. It has a positive opinion from the European Parliament, but we are waiting for the Council. So don't put more pressure on the Commission, put pressure on the Council. Yes. It's Council.
Sorry, it's my mistake.
Yeah, it's
because
Council.
the Commission is next to me, therefore.
It's Council. It's Council.
Council.
And there was one thing that you said, both of you, that is very important, is on cohesion policy. We are speaking to the converted. We need to speak outside. We have got to make sure that this message comes across, and that we should force all the ministers, all the local entities, to, when they make an inauguration, if the money is there from cohesion, from the European Union, that make it visible. Because otherwise people think, oh, Europe is just bureaucracy. No, there is bureaucracy. We are trying to simplify it, but there is much more than bureaucracy, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Please join me in thanking Commissioner Ferreira and our speakers for a very interesting panel. I think there is like a key message that comes from this discussion, a strong sense of togetherness, that Europe only works if we are in this together. It's about territorial inclusion, gender inclusion, all forms of inclusions are important and should be at the very heart of the process of European integration. So thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you very much, Commissioner Ferreira. Thank you all for your questions.
Thank you. How are you? Yes.
So I start to take the floor right away in order to bridge a little bit farther away, otherwise I kill people online. You've heard a lot, and as you can see from the program and from the timing, we took a little bit longer, but we still have a couple of input before inviting you for an appetizer here. Because we thought of continuing the reflection with a few minutes dedicated not only at the long term of the transformation of the EU budget and cohesion policy, but one moment also to look at the short term. Please.
Only 1 minute for a photo, because some of us should leave.
Photo op, but you can do the photo op even outside the room, perhaps.
Okay, of course.
Thank you.
So sorry for interrupting.
Oh, sorry.
Camilla, if you wanna, you can go, but come back in a second. I'm not needed in cool pictures, and I'm too tall. I don't fit in the pictures. That's the official excuse. It's a funny one. But we have heard today already from two great Portuguese politicians, Margarida Marques here and Elisa Ferreira. We were supposed to give you inputs also from Vasco Alves Cordeiro, the president of the Committee of the Regions, but because we are late, the president had to move, and we are super sorry with the colleagues as well of the Committee of the Regions, because the president spent like half hour on waiting room on Zoom. So we have to find ways to apologize to the president, but we thought of having one moment at the end of this discussion on transforming the EU budget to look at the very short term, and the short term is the European elections. The fear that somehow we have as progressives here at FEPS is also that the position of I would say, of the progressive family, of the social democratic forces, on cohesion is relatively strong and relatively well understood here in Brussels, but it's not really helpful to get anyone out to vote. And this is a way in which some of our lexicon on the budget, on cohesion, on not leaving anybody behind, is a lexicon that resonates on practitioners and experts here in Brussels. It's a lexicon that resonates a little less with the general voters. So we are very happy to have with us. You have the microphone in front of you, MEP Camilla Laureti, that for the Democratic Party in Italy is also one of the responsible for regional policy, also agricultural policies. So the question to you, it's literally, of course, you've heard the discussion before. So certainly, what are the do's and don'ts on future cohesion? But I link as well to the other question of besides cohesion itself, what are also the tools, other tools that the Union could use to foster coherence in cohesion? Because one is the cohesion as a tool, as a financing tool. But what if we endanger territorial and social cohesion when we do the energy union, the digital market union, the capital markets union? So we need cohesion, but as a tool and as transversal aspiration. How to do that?
Really thank also to you, David, because I think it's really an important meeting today. Also because I'm very much in agreement with the initiative of the Socialist Party and the approach that has been given to this issue. Because cohesion policy is in many ways a cornerstone of the European construction. It underpins the harmonious development that is at the heart of Europe. Let us remember socialists are the great builders of this policy. Think about it. Think about British Labour's George Thompson, who created regional policy in the 1970s. Think about Antonio Giolitti, Italian socialist, who redesigned the policy and brought the concept of regional planning to Europe. Think about Jacques Delors, the father of European cohesion. Cohesion is a socialist policy, and we must claim it. From my perspective, as an Italian MEP, and coming from a small region like Umbria, small geographically, as it is big in terms of tradition at the heart of European culture. Think about San Francesco of Assisi, who knew something about cohesion and sustainability. But first of all, and I told it, cohesion must be a regional policy. And I want to give you a specific perspective for that. You see, anyone who looks at cohesion policy from below knows that it is an essential step in building a European administration. Having region at the center in the programming and management of funds means helping to build throughout Europe an administration with the same language, the same deadline, the same instrument, who cooperate with administration of other regions, can learn from them. There's a lot more than spending and investing. There is creating a European administration, a central fact if you want to build a closer and more united Europe. So we must pay maximum attention to efficiency of regional administration in making smart specialization strategy effective, in reducing bureaucracy. But cohesion policy must remain a regional policy. Secondly, we must never, and I listened before, never think in terms of competition with the RRF. We must learn from the RRF. We must bring the good things of the RRF inside cohesion policy. More objective, more monitoring, more reform, more conditionality. We have to claim a strong cohesion policy and at the same time be very attentive to what we can learn from the RRF. And the third point, we must never tire of calling for more attention to the regional dimension in the various European policy and for more coordination. All European policies need a regional component. They have to pay attention to their territorial impact. Let's think about innovation policy. We must touch all territories, and this is also the socialist policy. Let's think also about capital markets union, which must ensure everywhere access to credit on the same term. And then coordination. This is a word we have been pursuing for years, and that we must now realize. We must fight to bring European, state and regional resources to work together, to act together for European strategic objectives.
Thank you, MEP Lauretti. Thank you, Camilla. Let me ask you the difficult question, because the issue now is literally what do we take outside the Brussels bubble? Because you will have to campaign, you will have to go to to the media, to the markets, to the people, and say, okay, we have clear demands and clear vision about what the EU budget and the cohesion would look like. But how to gain support on this? How to galvanize people in these respects? How to popularize cohesion and get more consensus from citizens, which for me it's partly connected, and I link basically the question 2 and question 3 in one. Now that we are a little bit short in time. Basically, how we can use it to fight this the worsening of the geography of discontent.
Sometime in public events, I ask the audience, can you tell me some of the works carried out by cohesion policy here? Well, very often I have no answer. Too often, cohesion policy is numbers, but not things for the audience. And I think that it's not true, because, for example, when we think about to the Italian voters, you see Naples, for example, without the Innovation Center in San Giovanni a Teduccio, among the excellent project financed with a European fund, or to the Spanish voters, you see Sevilla and Madrid without AVE, largely financed with European fund. There are things that have changed and are changing the life of citizens very concretely. This is cohesion policy. And this is what we must get across to the citizen. Here I can make a suggestion for everyone. I would identify a number of emblematic achievements made with European fund in each country and make our candidate talk about them in every country. And I would tell them to remind this achievement to our voters and to make them understand that Europe is near and that Europe can change things. I think this is a great concreteness to the concept that our expression, we always say the Green Deal has the red heart. We always say no one left behind, and it's central. But now we must claim it. And not least because today it is a word of a progressive party in Europe and beyond, but because I think this is for progressists, for socialists and Democrats. But we have to make example, because Europe have done a lot of things, also in our small cities. In Umbria, we have really a lot of small cities. And Europe is there, but we have to tell to the voters, because sometimes we don't tell in a right way.
Thanks a lot, Camilla. I feel a little bit reassured that we can use the message, because we know that somehow if we want cohesion and convergence in Europe to succeed, it has to be with a strong presence of social democrats in the next EU legislature. Thanks a lot to Camilla Lauretti. Thanks a lot to all the speakers and the participants. I think that by now you have all earned some appetizers, wine and beer in the other room. Let's make sure that we remain connected, because it's also the network and the power of the collectivity that can bring change. In Europe. So let's change material and keep on hammering to have a more functional and useful EU budget for all Europeans. Thanks a lot, and let's enjoy the food.